Hello and welcome to Tomlin's Harmonica podcast, where I'll be hanging out with players and teachers and having conversations loosely based around harmonica. This week's guest can only be described as a Renaissance man. He's carried out neuroscience research about musicians, worked with Barclays as a design director, and started his own product design consultancy. All of this, plus he's a world-renowned harmonica player and excellent teacher. He is Lee Sankey. Welcome to the show, Lee. How are you doing today?
Very good, Tomlin. Good to speak to you. Thanks for having me here.
And
a very nice introduction.
I'm glad you liked it. It was quite a difficult one to put together because there's so much stuff that you've done. It was difficult to kind of whittle it down.
Well, thank you. I mean, in a lot of ways, I feel genuinely like I haven't really done anything yet. I mean, it's part of what keeps me, sort of going when I look at what other people have done and think about my own achievements, etc. You just think. So yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one, but I think that everyone that has achieved a bunch of stuff is usually driven by exactly that sentiment of, that it's never enough and I want to do more. I guess, I mean, how do you fit everything in? Because, you do kind of keep on top of a bunch of stuff at any given time.
Yeah, I mean, badly really is the answer to that. I mean, I think that I don't have a problem like focusing, and I don't have a problem making decisions on what to work on. But I think a lot of the challenges I have are born from living in London. I know that sort of sounds a tangent, but I love London, and it's such an expensive place to live. If you want to live here, you got to get paid. Right. It's that simple. And I don't really want to live anywhere else. And so a lot of it is just, baseline economics. And then, so my book project is a classic example where, when I think about that, it just fills me with such pain that I haven't completed it. It's so important for me. But then when you try and balance trying to make a living at the same time, it's very difficult to, put the time in to justify to finish it. So I was making really good progress with that book, Brainstruments, from 2010 to about 2012. Even into 2013, and then I joined Barclays, and you can't, and I had a very senior position there, and I was doing some super cool stuff which I loved, but I was doing 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, and you can't. It's all consuming. You can't have a senior position like that and write a book on the side. You can't do it. And you can't. Now I have my own company. Well, I have two businesses, and I'm actually looking at exploring launching two more at the moment, because I think there's obviously this is a really crazy, tragic time period that we're going through, but we will get through it, and I think there's some cool things that might come out of it, as tragic as that may seem now. And but then I'm thinking, why am I trying to do these other projects, when I don't post that much to YouTube? I've got loads of courses that I could write, and how long it takes to write good content. Anyone can sling a video up on the Blue Scale, or here's how to play a song, and there's a space for that, and those videos perform a lot of useful functions. But if you want to write a proper course that's structured, that has a trajectory, it takes a long time, a lot of effort. It's not trivial. And so I'm thinking, there's all these things that I could be doing. So that's a very long way of saying that I don't watch too much TV. And so I work a lot, but also I spend a lot of time like not getting divorced, spending time with my wife, who I love dearly, and spending time with her, and keeping fit, looking after myself, those kind of things. So in between all of that, it is difficult, and I don't by any stretch of the imagination get it right.
Oh man, there's so much to talk about on this trajectory, because I feel the pain of all these ideas and all these things that you want to execute, and the desire to do them well. I think it would be super easy to start a bunch of things and not see them through, but wanting to kind of see it to its logical conclusion. And I read a book towards the end of last year which completely blew my mind, called Essentialism. And basically it kind of took me out of this mode of, starting a new business every week, starting a new course, like just all these different projects. And it wasn't kind of making you stop everything and never do it all, but doing one thing at a time, and making that your entire focus. And so that kind of made me start 2020 in a completely different vein. And so I've completely focused on one set of courses. I'm building out a beginner's curriculum at the moment, which I'd never done before. Everything had kind of been a little bit more advanced than that. Not massively so, but not kind of day one. And that's been great, but then something like COVID happens, and my brain has gone into hyperdrive, as I think your brain's probably gone into hyperdrive with all these new ideas, like starting this podcast. And it's kind of thrown me a little bit, and I'm trying to settle down and refocus. Are you experiencing quarantine brain?
Quarantine brain, yeah. As I think, people are gonna go through so many different emotions in this period, and we're only just beginning. I don't. There's no right or wrong, reaction to what's happening. People, I guess, will go from, despair to, elation on the same day. It's going to be a roller coaster. I think it's been particularly hard for, people whose businesses have been directly and quickly affected by this, musicians included, but hotels, bars, etc. My main business has been impacted by it, but I think I guess you can try and be optimistic and maintain your energy levels. And it's fine if people want to hang out, play PlayStation 4, read books. There's no right or wrong answer, to this. I've been trying to use the time creatively. So if that's my quarantine brain, but I think different people will have, different versions of it. But I think, you've done an amazing job, Tom, in building the business that you have, and that's taken a lot of focus. You managed to do it so consistently. I think that's the big thing. Where talking about essentialism and that sort of focus. I think if you really, because I the stuff that I do on YouTube and Vimeo is in a way is a business, but it's not a subscription business. I go for long periods of not posting any content, whereas you're doing so much more with it. I think you've done really well to kind of focus on that, and you're building out a platform in a way. I think when you find like a subject matter, I really like companies like Rafa. I don't Rafa, the cycling company. But if you find like an area that you're really passionate about, I'm saying it's cycling or a harmonica or whatever it is, but you then can have a core product around that. In Rafa's case, it's cycling clothing, but then because they're passionate about cycling, they sort of build out around the universe of cycling. They don't just make cycling clothes. That's where they started, but now they provide cycling holidays. They've got into nutrition and all the sort of universe that surrounds what cycling means. And it's the same with the harmonica in a way. You can build it out with guest collaborations as you do, and different topics and take it in so many different directions. I think it's really exciting. But the only way to do that really is to have that focus on it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for all those kind words. Yeah, it has definitely required focus, but I think it wasn't focused to begin with. It was kind of fluke. In the I've told this story a bunch of times before, but I used to have a brick and mortar music school here in Edinburgh, and I was just uploading videos for my students to have as a reference.
Right.
And it was only kind of organically starting to get a bit of traction on YouTube that I then thought, wow, this is so cool and so big, that if I did focus on it, then maybe it would go somewhere. And I didn't focus wholeheartedly on it for such a long time. I mean, I was doing a bunch of other stuff. I was still running the brick and mortar school. I was still teaching in a prep school once a week. I was buying and selling stuff on eBay, just kind of tons of different things going on, starting bands. And then it was only when I kind of made that leap of faith to get rid of all the things that felt secure and go fully into the online space that it really started to make sense.
Yeah. And people really underestimate how much a leap of faith that requires, you know, in anything. When you start your own business or work for yourself, you know, most people are so, I don't mean this in a sort of condescending or judgmental way, but just the physics of being employed for a lot of people, they're so abstracted from how value is created. And, you know, they go to work, they do a good job, and at the end of the month, some money appears in their bank account. But as soon as you run your own business, you're very much connected to how money, how wealth is created or not. And most people don't experience that. I mean, one of my favorite things with my main business, the innovation consultancy, is winning projects. You know, it's such a buzz when you go out and you pitch, and then someone entrusts you to work with you and give you money to come up with new ideas, new products, solve the problem, and winning that trust and delivering on it is almost as good fun as doing the work. And similarly, in a smaller way, I guess for me, I always get a huge buzz when someone buys one of my courses. Because people are, you know, I've put something out there and so on. And yes, you can put up YouTube content, but will someone buy one of your courses? And I'm always, when I check my stats, if someone's bought a course, it's not just like, oh yeah, there's some cash. It's not really about that. It's about someone is believed enough in what you are doing. It's almost like a signifier.
Yeah.
You know, and when you've made that course and someone parts money for it, it's fantastic. I really enjoy that side of it. And it pushes you to, you know, obviously make good quality things. But I get a real buzz out of that side of it. That someone is, especially in the age where so much content is free and people expect everything to, you know, cost nothing, where someone will part with some money for a course. It's great. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. And I think you, although we kind of do this kind of thing for love of the instrument and music and all that kind of thing, and education, it is incredibly validating having someone make that decision to invest in you in some way. And I think you don't need it to happen a huge amount to give you enough confidence to keep going, but you do need it enough. And I kind of think back to first days busking, and making 200 quid between five of us for 4 or 5 hours on the street, and thinking that we were millionaires because it was just
right. Okay.
it was so great. And enough money to buy some beers and some nibbles, and that was all we needed. And so we kept busking. And if we hadn't had that initial inspiration of, whoa, people like what we're doing, let's do it some more, we wouldn't have pushed through and then started gigging 4 or 5 nights a week. And there's kind of extra stages of validation along the way, which is really cool.
Yeah, but I guess every 50p that gets thrown into the hat is a form of validation in a sense, isn't it? Through to, if someone comes out and supports you at a show, that's validation. It's very hard now, which I think is a real shame, is that one of the things the internet has done, obviously, is it pushes the cost of things down to zero, and hopefully we are starting to bottom out of that curve around people are starting to understand, if you want a quality news, then you need to pay for it, right? Because you want newspapers to have good journalists and bureaus around the world. And publishing and music was one of the first industries to be disrupted by the internet. So now we're still in this period where there is no inherent perceived value in a piece of recorded music. And so you pay $9.99 or whatever it is to Spotify every month, and you can listen to anything that's ever been recorded. And as a consumer, it's fantastic. But obviously, previously you would have bought 4, 5, 6, 7 CDs a month, and that money more of it would have gone to artists. So now getting validation as a musician through songwriting and recorded music has pretty much disappeared in a monetary sense, which is a shame, really. But hopefully it will come back. Maybe we'll see.
I think, yeah, it is a shame in one sense, but I still believe that we're living in a time when there are so many more opportunities for musicians to kind of earn their keep than there have been in the past, and kind of the rise of what's being called the musical middle class is kind of a new part of the setup. It's these people who they're maybe not making all of the money from the creative process, but that's being subsidized by thinking more creatively about their own careers. So I think people are putting a lot more time into being their own publicist and publishing company, and creating music for all of the synchronization on film and video and all that kind of thing. That we have so many channels and so many movies being pumped out that there's loads of work on that front, and everyone has started teaching, which is great. It's great for you and for me because it validates online teaching a massive amount. And it means that I think people are getting a much closer relationship with their fan base thanks to the internet.
Yeah, 100%. But I do. It was always a hard way to make a living, and it remains so. And yes, the dials have been recalibrated in terms of where your revenue comes from, because people don't really buy CDs anymore. But as you say, there are other avenues which didn't exist before, for sure. Yeah.
Do you think that? So I mean, you put out your own music. Was that kind of late 90s, early 2000s? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. First album came out 98, 99, something like that. And then the next album was 2003. Yeah, a long time ago now.
Do you think if you were that age now and putting out music for the first time, do you feel that you could have turned it into more of a career, more of a long-term career that could have sustained a life in London?
No, I think it's harder now.
Uh-huh.
I do. On balance, I do think it's harder. Yeah. Especially if you want to be, which what I wanted to be at the time when I decided to turn professional, make the leap, was to be, in quotes, an artist. I didn't set out to post YouTube tutorials or make courses back then. I wanted to find my own voice, musically, as a harmonica player and as a songwriter. Not as a singer. I have a dreadful voice. I sing well enough to write a tune, but no one's going to pay money to hear me sing. So for me, it was all about making records and touring, the classic way. I think that way is for roots music, kind of music that I make or made. Is much harder. All the friends I know who are still on the scene, it's really difficult because venues are shutting, art subsidies, grants are not there, and I think although there's more and more channels and opportunities because of the internet, there's so much more noise to cut through. There's just so much content, so much music out there, and there's so much mediocre music out there, and you have to sort of cut your way through it. So what was hard for me in making an album when I was 25 was the recording costs and getting it pressed and distributed. None of those things are problems now. You can make a good record for not very much money in terms of production costs, and you can whack it on Spotify, whatever. So distribution and making is not the issue. The issue is translating that into listeners and revenue. But if you want to write soundtracks and teach and have a hybrid kind of career, then I think then, as you say, there are so many more avenues. But when I got into it, it was like, I want to be Kim Wilson or the artist that inspired me to play, and that meant touring and trying to make great records. And so I think now that would be really easy in terms of putting the music out, but would anyone hear it? And I saw a massive difference when I think back about the time when I was a musician, and then I haven't done a gig under my own band since 2004. That's a lot, that's an ice age, right? My last gig as the Lee Sankey group was in October 2004 in Paris at the New Morning. And since then, I haven't really played, my own music. I haven't had a band since then. And if I think just going up to that point, how much the music scene changed from 1998 to 2004. When my first album came out, I could sell it through, I would just go up to Tower Records and up to Virgin in Oxford Street, and they would take copies from me, and they were selling so many that led me to get a distribution deal, and that record sold much better than I expected. And that's when I turned pro. And when I launched my second record, getting it played, or just seeing how the internet was already changing behavior was really different just in those few years. And like now, it would just be totally different. It would all be about Instagram. Yeah. YouTube, building that. People like, do you know Jacob Collier? People like that. Yeah. So that's how that's a contemporary way to do it, right? So yeah, I think what you'd have to do now would be very different to what I was doing in 1998, for sure.
But I think, what you did in 98 was kind of innovative in itself. Because not a lot of musicians put together a recording and kind of sort out trying to get a distribution deal themselves. A lot of people I mean, maybe it was starting to tail off by then, but I think a lot of people were trying to rely on trying to get record contracts and some kind of support. I think that's definitely strikes me as a personality trait of yours, that you want to kind of do it your own way. So I think that you're potentially selling yourself short if you were starting now. I think you could make it work, because you are innovative in how you do things.
That's very kind. But at the end of the day, I think there's so much of it that's out of your hands. That's what's so cruel about anything, creative, be it, if you're providing some kind of service or selling a product, you can put yourself in the best position for someone to buy your product or hire you. But a lot of it is about luck, and I wish it was all about hard work and stuff, but it isn't. At the end of the day, and a lot of it is out of your control. Why do some people make it, and others don't? But when I actually recorded My Day Is Just Beginning, my first album, when I was 27, and so I started writing it when I was about 25, and I basically worked in a call center and saved all the money. That's how I made the recording, basically. But it took me a long time, 3 or 4 years, to save the money. And my absolute focus creatively during that period was I was sort of making another point, but essentially once I had it recorded, I did have quite the long discussions with Sony about releasing it through them and also Island Records. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I couldn't really see it happening. And also, my mum used to work for CBS Records back in the 60s. And just, that artists don't really get much money from the label. So record labels really started out as banks. Mm-hmm. That's what they really are. Record labels are essentially banks. So they would provide the capital for you to make your record when recording studios are really expensive, and that's what they were. They were essentially banks. When you can make an album on a laptop, the role of a record company has kind of shifted. And so I thought, well, I can make this myself, and if I can sell a CD for £10 at on the stage, that's £10 to me minus whatever it cost me to record and press it. So it just seemed I could be a lot less successful and make more money, which is, but now I just think, you sometimes you would do gigs back in the day and you might sell 60, 70 CDs sometimes. Mm-hmm. Right. And now artists who are, some artists are doing that, but I imagine in roots music, that's pretty, rarely the case. And but the main thing, thinking back to that period, was that first record for me was all about putting out a record that I didn't already own. One of my biggest sort of observations and criticisms of blues music is just the lack of originality in the songwriting and the chord progressions and so on. And for me, it was always things, groups like Portishead. I've said this many times, for me, Portishead is a blues band, right? Totally. Right. I don't know if you know a singer called Alice Russell. She's on a label called True Thoughts. She's a blues singer, right? You listen to Alice Russell. She's a blues singer, right? And then you have other people like, Gary Clark Jr. or, John Mayer, who sort of straddle and take it in different places. And I think the idea that, which if you want to do a museum piece, and there's a place for that, and there's some people who do that really well, and I still love bands that are out doing that. But for me personally, I didn't see the point in releasing a record I already owned. It seemed just entirely bizarre. So my main focus around putting out that record was for it to be a blues record, an unashamed blues record. But I wanted it to be very well recorded. So I worked with a guy called Phil Brown, who recorded like Talk Talk and Tears for Fears and people like that. And I spent a shitload of cash on recording it and mastering it. Can we swear, by the way?
Of course. Yeah, no, don't worry. Right, everything is explicit here.
All right. Okay, great. I wasn't thinking, yeah. And I, spent a lot of money producing it, but I wanted, the focus was on the material, and even in the run up to that, even though I, like I said, I sing just about okay. And I can sing, I sound like Ray Charles in my head, but obviously it sounds terrible. But I knew the average listener doesn't listen to the harmonica solo, right? If you want to make a great record and a great song, as opposed to a record for harp players, most people listening are not going to be they're not interested in tongue blocking or overblow. They're just interested in the song and the idea. And for me, that meant that I had to work with a singer, a proper singer, because that's going to be front and center, right? Otherwise, and if I do make another record, and I like to someday, I'm thinking I would do what Ronnie Earl did, with that album called Still River, which is a fantastic album, I think 10, 11 tracks, and it's all instrumentals. It's fantastic. No singer, and it's an unashamedly blues guitar album. And it's not like, here's 2 bars of average vocals and let's get them out of the way, and then I can play my harmonica. And I didn't want my first record, to be like that. And that was my main sort of creative focus.
Which is really unusual for anyone doing their first record as an instrumentalist. Because I mean, the classic thing is to kind of come out and try and do a showcase of your chops. And I mean, you have chops for days, so it would be logical to kind of do the Harmonica Hero album. I think it's really cool that you didn't do that, and obviously there's great playing on it. But then you also have ridiculous musicians on it, because you had Matt Schofield and Ian Siegel on it, didn't you?
Ian wasn't on my first record, okay. But Matt Schofield was, and I guess that is such an amazing period, because the genesis really of that record was I got into harmonica when I was 18. I by a guy called James Hunter, who used to be called Howling Wilf. And he's a really, I think he's the UK's best R&B singer, the finest R&B singer the UK's ever produced. He's absolutely phenomenal. He doesn't play harmonica anymore, but I saw him and I was like, literally the sky opened. Again, it was October 1988 in Gossips, which is like a rock club, promoters like Gaz and Rockin' Blues. It's still going. And it was in a basement in this on Dean Street, where the Soho townhouse is now. And I started getting into harmonica, but I'd never thought about playing it. But when I saw someone playing it live, with a bullet mic and that whole amplified sound, I was like, wow. And I went and bought one the next day. And then by coincidence, not by coincidence, it just kind of happened. I'd started going to see his gigs, and he was playing the 100 Club. And then one evening, Paul Lamb was on the bill. And then I saw Paul, and Paul is like an out and out harp player. So then I started following Paul around. Paul and I became good friends, and he taught me so much. But one of the things that I realized watching Paul is that Paul just played harp. He had a fantastic singer, whoever it was at the time. He didn't compromise on the vocals. And through that same period, I started going to the Station Tavern, which is where Paul and other, Big Joe Louis, Steve Weston, all these guys were playing this pub called the Station Tavern. And then around the same period, there was this pub in North London called the Weavers, which ran easily the best jam session of the period in London. So people, American acts would come and play there. The house band was a touring band. It was a very, very, very good band. But I remember after a period of time, just everything, the lack of songwriting really started to come across. And so out of that period of the Weavers, that's what really drove home that I wanted to have my own sound and my own voice and have my own material. And then when I met Matt, the Weavers, he was only like 16 and a half or 17 at the time, but you could see the potential, and he was able to. So I was playing guitar at that point, so I started playing guitar a year after I started playing harmonica, and so I was able to sort of noodle riffs and so on, but Matthew was able to build and contribute so much more onto what I was doing, as did all the guys in the band, Jeff Walker on bass and David Migden on vocals. So I was very, very lucky to be working with those guys, and it all just sort of clicked around that concept, and we wanted to do something different. And all those guys, I did at one point have Ian Siegel and Matt Schofield in my band, and a 5-piece horn section, and that was a killer outfit. It's a shame there's no YouTube footage of that lineup, because that we would go up against anyone. That was a very special band.
That's absolutely insane. I think when you're talking about kind of luck in the music industry, to me, that kind of luck is the real luck. It's the happening to be in a scene where you happen to make those connections with those people. Paul Lamb takes you under his wing, like just those kind of very chance things that come together. If you hadn't seen James Hunter playing, then you wouldn't have rushed out to buy a harmonica. Like all this stuff had to come together, which is kind of nuts. It's fine lines, and I only went to see that James Hunter gig because a girl at college mentioned it, because I started listening to harmonica. I started got into the blues. Literally, how embarrassing is this, right? I got into blues because of a Levi's advert on TV, right? There was a Levi's track, which was, I think, one of the first. Levi's went through a very cool period in the sort of late 80s. They had these iconic adverts with soundtracks from the Smiths and all different things around 80, 85, 86, 87. And one of them was where this guy walks into a laundrette, okay? And it had Muddy Waters' Mannish Boy was the soundtrack. Nice. And I remember hearing that, just going, wow, what is that? And of course, my mum and dad had loads of blues records at home, but of course you don't listen to your mum and dad's music, do you? I was listening to Africa Bombata and Herbie Hancock Rocket and the Smiths and other stuff like that. So I was like, what's that? And then it turns out, my mum had loads of Paul Butterfield records, loads of Lightning Hopkins records, but I never asked her because she's my mum, and my mum's not going to listen to cool music. And when I started listening to it, it was the harmonica that really stood out for me in the instrumentation rather than the piano or the guitar. It was the harmonica that spoke to me. And then, this girl just knew that I'd started listening to blues and that I liked the harmonica, and just said, oh, yeah, I saw a band the other night. You should go and check them out. They got a harmonica player. And 9 times out of 10, you don't go, do you? No.
If someone says to you, hey, I saw a great film the other day, or I read this great book, right? 9 out of 10, you go, yeah. But I actually went. And the fact that I went changed my life, 100%. I was on one particular vector, and that took me onto another vector, because that's the important thing, I think, why live music is so important, and also why live workshops and live educational experiences are so important, because I had listened to loads of blues harmonica at that point, right, on tapes, right, and it didn't cross my mind to play, because I had a very bad experience of music at school. When I was at school, music was all about classical music. It's not like today where, if you go and do music today, they'll teach you rock and they'll teach you, right. It was very snobby and inaccessible, and it was all around classical music. And I didn't like classical music then. I don't like classical music now. So I didn't get into it. But so it never crossed my mind to play an instrument. But when you see someone actually doing it, it can light a candle. It's the same with the guitar, right? I saw B.B. King play in Hammersmith Apollo, I think in 89. And I saw him play, and I was like, that is just the coolest thing ever. And of course, I'd heard loads of guitar before, but it's that thing that thing about seeing it live. And I also remember one of the big impactful moments for me with Paul was in my first lesson with him, right, going around his house and hearing him play acoustic, right, no amplifier, and suddenly realizing that big fat West Coast sound is an acoustic thing, right? I was like, whoa, the sound he could get out of the harmonica without an amplifier. When I heard him do that, when I was like, I must have been 19, 20, I was like, that is incredible, because you think, oh, it's the amp. He's using a Bassman and a bullet mic. That's where the sound comes from. And it's not. You can get that sound, without it. Well, in fact, you have to be able to get that sound without it. And so it's having those up close, experiences.
Oh, no doubt. I remember the first year I did the Edinburgh Harmonica workshop. I wrote to so many people, to like all the people I liked listening to on YouTube. And everyone said yes. It was kind of nuts. But I got, Adam Gussow, Christelle Berton, Liam Ward. It kind of got to the stage where other people started saying yes. I think you had said yes, and I was like, shit, I can't actually bring everyone.
Maybe next year, or the year after,
And I remember picking up Adam from the airport, and we were chatting about harmonica and stuff, and he's like, so have you ever seen an amplified harmonica player live? I was like, no, I've never experienced this. And so kind of up to this point, I really enjoyed teaching harmonica because I enjoyed teaching. That was it. It wasn't that I was completely in love with the instrument. It was that I really love teaching and I love music. And that was kind of my angle. And then I see Adam on stage that night, and I was like, oh shit, this is too cool. Like that sound, that big, he had a teeny tiny valve amp, but this big dirty amplified harmonica sound, and then Christelle and Liam. I was like, oh, okay. And that was when I started taking harmonica seriously. And I was already a harmonica teacher and playing harmonica in bands, but I'd never heard someone who could cup a microphone properly. I'd never heard all of that and that tone kind of in person, and kind of felt my trousers flapping with the volume and all that kind of thing. It's
it's great.
Totally different. I'm gonna ask you a little bit about that kind of fateful moment when you started playing the harmonica, and you played it the wrong way around. You picked it up and did your own thing once again. What's up with that?
Well, I may have, I don't, this is just supposition, but I may have very, very mild synesthesia. So when I put my belt on, like in the opposite direction, when I look at a piano, the notes are the wrong way round. So I'm just wired, in a different way. So when I picked up the harmonica, it's not, I honestly didn't realize there were numbers on it. Right. I mean, I just had it in my mouth so much, and I just picked it up I didn't have any lessons. There wasn't YouTube, obviously, and I was just figuring it out myself. And so I didn't know what cross position was, or I didn't have any music theory. So I would literally just put on records and work my way through, like, why does that work? Why does that not work? And it was all by ear. And so it wasn't intentional. It was just the harmonica made sense to me that way. And I'd been playing for about 6 months until someone told me I was playing the wrong way round. And I thought, I was like, oh, am I? Oh, okay, I'm doing it wrong. But it didn't. I tried it the other way, and it just seemed totally alien to me. So if I sit at a keyboard, the low notes would be at my right. Mm-hmm. That's how. So it wasn't intentional. But I think as learning like that, as you had to then, I think has real advantages in some ways compared to the way people learn now. I think you and I've chatted a little bit about this before, but people like you and I, in a way, are contributing to a problem in that we make it too easy for people.
No doubt.
And so people listening to this who are sort of really serious about progressing their level, whether they want to become pro or not, it's not about, even if it's a hobby, if you just want to progress and get better at it, there's that one. If I wanted to find something out about harmonica playing, I had to get on a night bus, right, and travel. I had to make a big effort, to go and speak to someone, and I had to befriend someone, and I needed someone to take me under their wing and all that kind of stuff. I didn't just do a Google search. I really had to want to find out, and then. It's great that all this information is out there, but the downside is people don't learn to use their ears, and people don't build the mental machinery around working stuff out themselves. I learned to play Duke and all these things, not because I watched a tutorial on it. Okay, I would have learned it much quicker, but would my ears be as good? Would my musical brain be as strong as it is had I had it all laid out for me? Probably not. That's why I don't provide tabs in a lot of the stuff that I do. I try and explain it. So there's a balancing act. I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, Tomlin, but it's a difficult balancing act, because you want to teach someone and lay it all out for them and have really clear explanations. But the downside of that is people are not having to spend hours rewinding a CD player going, what was that phrase? What was that phrase? What was that phrase? Do you see what I mean?
I do.
And there's a trade-off there.
There is. It's really difficult, because I struggle with this all the time. Trying to explain to students who do have it all laid out to them just how much time they need to spend on one thing. Because if you can see the entire roadmap laid out for you, there's this temptation to just skip through it, and especially if there's maybe a not so much of a technical barrier, but there's a musical barrier. So people will skip through because they think they can play it because they have the technical ability to play it, but they haven't really internalized. To me, it comes down to at the beginning, listening to a 12-bar blues for 1,000 hours and going so deep on that thing that gets really dull and repetitive, but then it starts getting interesting again because you've done it so much and it's so ingrained that you can then mess around with it.
Yeah.
But then the other side is how many people get put off because of the barrier to entry. Because I think it's a personality type. I'm an incredibly obsessive person. I love learning stuff. I feel that if I have a superpower, it's learning. It's not, I'm not an amazing harmonica player. I'm not an amazing guitarist or any of the other stuff that I do, but I am good at learning quite quickly and going deep and getting obsessive. But most people aren't like that. But they still want to be able to have fun with the instrument, because for most people it's a hobby, and I think that's really healthy. I I don't think seeking to be a great musician is a particularly healthy thing for your mental well-being.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you and I both know how difficult
Yeah,
it
it can
is.
drive you to distraction. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, that's right. And I think the other thing is, a lot of people don't. Well, they have limited time, right? So they don't have. They just want it laid out for them. I've had discussions with some people who've taken my lessons and like, why isn't this tabbed? And I'll explain why, and they'll be like, well, I haven't got time. I just want to set it, and and that's fine. I think it's just something to be cognizant of if you are playing and learning, whatever your ambitions, and you have this amazing resource around you that is the internet and YouTube, and the ability to interact with great players all over the world. That don't forget to use your ears.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the musicality, and I think I'm going to segue ever so slightly because I think this is a really good point to talk about the kind of mental modeling of instruments that you've done a lot of work on, because I think what you've described about going deep and trying to work it out yourself, that is the only way to create that mental representation of the instrument that is completely essential to actually have mastery over it. Do you want to just talk a little bit about Brainstruments? Because I think it's a fascinating project.
Yeah, I mean, coming back to right at the top of the conversation, one of the things I'm sort of kicking around now is, do I use this time to actually try and finish the book and move it on?
Do it.
Yeah, but then I'm thinking, it's like I'll probably sell 10 copies and why I haven't been able to hook it all up. But that said, I am thinking about getting back onto it because it is such a cool idea, and I've had so much great input from so many amazing people. But essentially, in a nutshell, our experience of the world and objects is based on inputs from our senses. Okay. And so when we're interacting with something, we're not interacting with that object. We're interacting with our brain's mental model of that thing or the world, right? So for instance, the easiest one, best known one, is your vision is put together at the back of your head. Yeah, you don't see with your eyes. You think you see with your eyes. You do not see with your eyes. The visual cortex is at the back of your head, and you see a lot more things, or your brain sees a lot more things than actually reaches your conscious. There's no such thing as color in the real world. It's a mental concept. Okay, there's no such thing as major and minor in vibration of air molecules. These are all mental model concepts. So when you are playing a musical instrument, you are not playing that physical musical instrument. You're playing a mental model based on the inputs from your senses, and the brain makes it very realistic, right? It has weight, and it responds to you, and so on. So I'm not saying the physical object is not real, but but how you interpret that and what you understand of it is a mental model constructed by the brain. Yes. Now, some instruments making that mental model easy for the brain because they give you visual information. Okay. But for instance, if you look at a drum kit, right, a drum kit does not tell you anything about time. Okay. If you look at a harmonica doesn't really give you many visual clues as to where the notes are. You can get a broad sense of, higher is this way and lower, but then you have bends for the notes, and each octave is laid out differently. Whereas the guitar does provide visual clues, and it has a logic, that you can apply. You can play in a certain way on the G fret, go up to the A fret, and it holds. Saxophone, right? So different instruments have different challenges. So when you look at a trumpet, you've got 3 buttons and you've got this metal tube, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where is G9 on a trumpet? Right? There's no cue there.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's the same. I started asking harmonica players how they knew where the notes were on a harmonica, and I asked harmonica players if they heard something by Little Walter or they had an idea in their head, how were they able to translate that onto the instrument? And I noticed very quickly, because I was wondering what I was doing that made me play to a decent standard, where I saw a lot of people, especially when I first started out, who'd been playing for a lot longer than I had and who were passionate about it and practiced, but to be honest, weren't very good. And so I started, after I'd been playing for about 20 years, I sort of think, what am I doing? And I started asking people, how did they know where the notes were? And I noticed very quickly all the players who were professional and people who played well could articulate, oh, it's like this. I, in quotes, see it like this. Whereas all the people who struggled could not. And I thought, oh, no one's ever mentioned this. And then I realized, well, it can't just apply to the harmonica, right? It must apply to all instruments. So I essentially, did this research project and involving, I can't remember now, 40, 50 of the world's top jazz musicians, blues musicians. I interviewed 15 of the world's top harmonica players, including chromatic and diatonic. And I did a sample test against 15 hobbyists, or I don't think of the words hobby harmonica players, I guess. And I compared the results between, and basically 95% of the pros could articulate a mental model, where I can't remember the exact percentage of the amateurs, but hardly any of them could. And I've also spoke and interviewed some of the world's leading neuroscientists, people from Harvard, UCL. I've people like Chris Frith, who basically is invented our modern understanding of what perception is. So Brainstruments. If you go to brainstruments.com as a website, you can download the research paper there. You can find out all about the key concepts. And I'm hoping to turn it into a book. But the project's 10 years old now. It goes like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's so interesting, and it's kind of validating to kind of read about something that maybe you can't verbalize yourself. Because I definitely had actually quite a lot of confusion with mental models, because I'm a guitarist originally, and spent a lot longer playing guitar before I started playing harmonica. And for the longest time, when I was playing harmonica, I was visualizing a guitar in my mind. And when students would ask what a certain note was, I would be playing a fretboard to find that note.
Right.
And now that I play a ton more harmonica for various reasons, and I've kind of over the last couple of years realized that model has started to move more towards a very kind of definite harmonica image, so much so that it's actually making me struggle on the guitar to think outside of how I visualize things on the diatonic, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, I think it's a case of learning, to switch between the two. I think it's the same thing if you're bilingual or multilingual. Do you dream in a certain language, or do you, these kind of things? But the brain has an amazing capacity to be able to switch, between the two. And your mental model is a reflection of basically neural pathways. And there's this contradiction between, actually, they did like a research on beatboxers, okay, which is a very easy way of taking someone off the street and getting them to beatbox and comparing them with a professional beatboxer, because you don't have to spend years learning to play. It's something everyone can do. And what they found was that there's this thing of cognitive efficiencies, and professional beatboxers, even though those neural pathways are really stronger, they actually were generating like less electricity through them, because they were so well. So your mental model essentially, though, is a reflection of of practice and thinking about it. And that comes back to what we were talking about a moment ago about developing that mental machinery, including, your ears. The biggest thing people can do, okay, is in terms of building your brain instrument, there's no right or wrong answer. Okay. It's a very personal thing. I've spoken to, nearly all the top blues harmonica players in the world. And there are basically 3 generic types of models. But, Brendan Power's mental model is very different to Jason Ritchie's, for example. And in chromatic, players tend to have only a couple of different models. Their models are very similar. But the key thing, what you need to do is you need to create a representation in the mind's eye, which lets you know and understand in a bi-directional way. So either you imagine you want to play something and you can say, oh yeah, it's there, I go here and there, or you hear something and you go, oh yeah, they're doing that, right? And it needs to be able to take, it's not about emotion. People do, have different representations about intensity and emotions and things like that. But I'm talking about really the practical, physical thing of how you convert knowledge and creative ideas into electricity, which drives the physical actions which power the instrument. So you need to develop a representation which includes, breathing and drawing, the bends, and the full range of the harmonica. Now I can see the harmonica, from 1 to 10, the diatonic, with all the bends, all the overblows. But it's like I'm holding it. It's that crystal clear, and I can also stack them one on top of the other. So I can be playing on a chord change and I can think about chord changes in front of me. Like I can be on the 1 and I can put another layout on top and say, that's the 5 chord, that's the 4 chord. So I can see multiple changes at once. And it's all about moving through these spatial arrangements. So so it's, start with 1 octave or something very simple. And whenever you're practicing scales, or listening to music, try and picture in your mind's eye what does that mean to your brain, and where is it, and then practice without the harmonica in your mind. Okay, so there's research which has shown in classical musicians who are in the top 5% in classical music are those who spend time doing mental practice as well as physical practice. So if you practice away from the instrument, so if you imagine, let's take the on a C harmonica, the first position major scale, going from 4 to 7. Yeah, blow, draw, blow, draw, blow, draw, draw, blow. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now I see that, okay, almost like a fence on its side in front of me. Okay, so I've got the blow 4 going away from me. Yeah. The draw 4 coming back to me, and I can see it in like a horizontal plane. Yeah. And then, so you imagine you got blow, draw, and then you move across, you go blow, draw. So you get like a teeth shape as you move across them. Yeah. So you've basically got 2 triangles up to the 6, blow, draw, blow, draw, blow, draw. And then you've got that kink. Then you've got a line going from the draw 6 to the draw 7. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the blow 7. So I see it as, so if you take the harmonica away and just leave the line that you would draw between those points, okay, that is a very basic way of explaining what a brain instrument is. And you need to really have that. So now in my mind's eye, I can play major scale, I can hear it, I can feel it in my lips and my lungs, but I can see it, right? You hear it, see it, play it. That's the kind of mantra. And so I can play things like Duke in my head without the harmonica. And I can see every phrase. I can play it through when I'm listening to someone, on a CD or at a gig. Most of it, I can say, oh, right, they're doing that. Of course, there's some licks and things which are so fast. You can't get all of it. Right. But and when you're improvising, you're not really thinking because it's too fast. But the subconscious basically uses that brain instrument to let you execute, as I said, converting knowledge and ideas into electricity, muscle movements, that drive the physical instrument, whether you're a trumpet player, drummer, harmonica player, whatever. And if the brain doesn't have that clear mental model, then bad things happen. And I think for most harmonica players, their mental model, the lights go out from 6 above.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I'm definitely in that category. That's something that I've been working on a lot since we did the workshop together. Actually, I realized that was kind of the one thing that I felt really uncomfortable. If anyone was like, "So, why don't we go up and play higher?" It's like, please don't ask me to do that.
Right.
So that's something that I've been working on a lot, and it's kind of nuts, because it's almost like you have a crystal clear representation of the harmonica, and then there's a sort of shadowy area, and you can kind of just gradually start to add it in, and it gets clearer and clearer.
That's it. That's exactly what you have to do. You have to go into the bits which are foggy and murky, and as you say, make them clearer. And also they obviously, notes mean different things in different keys, or when they have different chords, so the draw 2 in cross position is obviously the 1, but then if you're in cross position, that draw 2 root note becomes the 5th, right? So all the notes and what they do and how they function changes depending on the key that you're in, or the chord that is sitting behind that note at the time. So you also have to get into your head the idea of the roles that those notes play, and the meaning of the notes in tandem with this spatial layout. And you end up having, as a harmonica player, it'd be very different for instruments where you literally have to know what the notes are in order to play. So say the saxophone or the piano, but a harmonica, you can just pick different harps and play in different keys. So with an instrument like the harmonica, you need to build in different brain instruments for different positions, right? And so you have, a 1 to 10 version of first position, a 1 to 10 version of cross third, and so on, if you want to do fifth. Same for Power Bender or any of these other tunes. I mean, what's great about the chromatic is at least it has some kind of replicable logic as you move up. Once you've learned one octave, it's rinse and repeat as you move up, right? But the diatonic is such a it's such a flipping annoying thing that notes are hidden, and then you move up an octave and they're in a different place, and then some notes which are available in that octave are not available in this octave, and then you move up again, and it's all different. So it's like the reason why it's so important to have a brain instrument on the harmonica is not only is it not a visual instrument, it's in your mouth and you're not looking at something, and humans are visual creatures. It's also because there's no replicable logic between each octave. So it's like playing the piano, but each time you move down into a different octave, someone comes along and moves all the keys around. Right? Yeah. You have to. Each octave is its own creature, has its own personality, and then each harmonica key has its own character. You need a different approach to play cross harp on an F to playing cross harp on a G or a low F. Right? There are different sensibilities, and the reeds behave in a different way. So you can't tear into the harps in the same way, and they, playing an E flat in third position is completely different to playing a B flat harp in third position, for example. So there's all these things that you have to figure out into your mental model and your approach to get the best, out of the instrument. Otherwise, that's why so much harmonica sounds like, pardon the pun, but suck it and see. Yeah. And it doesn't have that in kind of intentionality. And I think over the last 10 years with help, from people such as yourself, the standard of harmonica playing is definitely improving 100%. There's some phenomenal players out there. who've learned from yourself and Adam and and other players. So the standard is definitely going up. But brain instruments is super important, and the other bit which has occupied a lot of this discussion in a healthy way is the musicality and people trying to find their own voice.
Definitely. Well, I was just going to say, you might correct me here, but I think that I would agree that working on the brain instrument is incredibly important. But if someone's just starting out, I think that it could appear quite overwhelming to think about the entire instrument in one position across 3 octaves and then another position, and they might think that they have to tackle all of that at once, when actually, well, certainly for me, when I think about any position, I think about how it relates to my foundational position, my second position. And, for example, when I think about my major playing, I've actually got a much stronger image of minor scales on the instrument. And so I think about how a major scale relates to a minor scale. So it's kind of always building on that foundational knowledge. It's not lots of separate knowledge that you have to learn separately. It's stuff that's additive. At least I think. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's 100% correct. It is all about taking something foundation and building on it over time, rather than taking disparate or unconnected concepts and trying to construct something cohesive out of them. So when you're building your brain instruments, if you just have a mental model, your brain instrument just deals with holes 1 to 4, mm-hmm. right? You can get loads out of that. Then that's fine, and get that really clear. But when you're practicing scales, let's say you're practicing second position blues scale, starting from draw 2, ending on blow 6, for example, try and place those notes in a spatial way in front of you. But yes, you don't have to building a brain instrument, again, which comes back to the beautiful thing about learning a musical instrument, is it's something which takes place over time and takes effort, which is why it's rewarding. So, my brain instrument now is hopefully, well, it's probably not better than when I was a pro, but it's something which is evolved and emerged over time. So don't think you have to get all 3 positions from 1 to 10. Straight away. That the way you've articulated it there is have a foundational area and then build out from that over time. But just make a concerted effort when you are practicing, especially scales. You ask yourself, how do you know where those notes are, and how am I seeing? And when I bend a note, the reason why it should come quite naturally to people, but there's no right or wrong answer for what the brain instrument is, as long as the brain instrument includes the right pieces of information the brain needs, as I said, to convert them into muscle movements, is the way we make sense of the world. A big component of it is sound. Okay, we're spatial creatures. Okay, if we tap something and it has a certain sound, we know it's hollow. If we tap something and it's solid, it has a certain sound. If something is far away, it sounds quieter than if it's nearer, right? If something is falling, we associate that with descending pitch. Yeah. So we're inbuilt with certain spatial wiring which will let you form your brain instrument. So for me, when I bend a note, okay, the note that I'm bending spatially moves down. Yeah. So that just naturally falls into place. So if I imagine the draw 2, for me, draw 2 is kind of like 15, 20 degrees out to my right from my nose, for the purposes of an audio broadcast. Yeah. So to me, that is, so my brain instrument is probably a bit bigger than shoulder width. Okay. And I can sort of magnify in at certain points. Right. But it's a bit bigger than my shoulders, and my draw two kind of reflects that. So slightly off at a tangent. So if I'm thinking about that draw two, and that draw two has two other bends on it, right? It has a semitone and then it has the tone. Yeah. Those to me are in very specific places spatially from me. Okay. It's about half a foot in front of me and across to one side. Right. And then similarly, that draw three, and I've got the draw three half step bend, that minor third, that is in a specific place. Right. So when I go da 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 da, something like that, right, I can see that going from that root da 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 onto that minor third da 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 da. It's got a very special specific place. So it's those little things that you can do, and you don't need some special power to do it, as I said, because we are inherently visual, and we use sound anyway to make sense of the world spatially, and you can draw on those things to build your brain instrument.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit of the brain instrument with us. And what I didn't say earlier is everything that you've mentioned. I've been making a note of, and I'll include it in the show notes so people can go and check out brain instruments, as well as My Day's Just Beginning, and some of the people that you mentioned, because I think they're worth checking out too.
Oh man, yeah, check it out. Matt Schofield and Ian Siegel, they're just ridiculous. Alice Russell, all those Portishead, for people who probably know Portishead, but as also I'm digging this band called the Black Pumas at the moment. I don't know if you come across them.
No, I've not.
Black Pumas, man, check them out. Yeah, there's a track called Stay Gold.
All right, I'll put that in the show notes.
The guy's voice is killer.
Nice.
To me, it's got Anyway.
Okay, you need to stop promoting other people, and you need to tell us if there's anything that you want to promote to people listening.
Well, I think the two things really. Yeah, check out my YouTube channel if you haven't already, and then I only have sort of 2 paid courses out at the moment, and they're just available on Vimeo on demand, and I have one on country blues style, which I really enjoy playing, and one on timing skills, and that's my latest course. And I think there's been a bit of sort of misunderstanding about, I've probably chosen a really bad title for it, because people when you say timing skills, people think, oh yeah, I can keep time already. It's not really about keeping time. It's how you can use time to improve your phrasing, and to make your playing more interesting and less linear. You know, a lot of harmonica playing is very square, square to the beat. And when you listen to Little Walter and people like that, it's not that not only do they have, good tone and stuff, but it's their sense of time, which is your phrasing.
Yeah. I've seen Lee do a workshop on these timing skills twice now, and every time I come out just kind of thinking, wow, there's all this stuff I need to work on. It's so cool. And I think what's kind of absolutely amazing with it is that it's not about playing a ton of different really exciting notes. It's about taking simple phrases and getting as much variation and as much groove out of it as you can, because really, like, lots of notes is something that people hide behind, and great rhythm is what makes listeners really excited musically, especially people who don't, I'm kind of air quoting, understand music, people who just enjoy it. They don't care about risque scale choices. They care about great groove. And yeah, the timing skills is definitely worth checking out, as is the country blues, which for me is how I discovered you. Was kind of checking out country blues playing through your YouTube channel, and yeah, I love that style, and I love you teaching it. So everyone should check both of those courses out.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
No, thank you, and thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a real pleasure, and I could keep going. Like, I could get you to talk.
We'll do a round 2. Let's do a part 2.
Great.
Let's do a part 2.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Have a great day, man.
You too.
See you
Take
later.
it easy. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Tomlin's Harmonica podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. Join me next Monday for the next episode. Happy harping!